Welcome back to Alt Baking Bootcamp,
your crash course in healthier baking.
This is a show where we take your favorite baked goods and make them a little bit healthier so we can suit different types of lifestyles and dietary restrictions and also keep them tasting really good.
Today, we're tackling our first savory recipe, which is bread, the original baked good. I'm Mia Rigdon, nutritionist, trained chef, the founder of Rasa, and I am here to talk about the nutrition side of our baked goods.
I'm Jenny Dorsey, professional chef, writer, and the founder of Studio Atao. I'm here to talk about all the science, how to do combinations and ratios so that you can get a consistent product every time.
Today we're making paleo bread. Paleo, in a nutshell, is high protein, low carbohydrate. There's a lot of variations of this diet. To enjoy paleo bread doesn't mean that you have to be a hardcore paleo person, but what I like about it is that you're getting some good protein and that there aren't any refined carbohydrates or grains that are going to spike your blood sugar levels, which is something we talk about a lot on Alt Baking Bootcamp.
So normally we taste an original version, but I think we are all on the same page that we know what bread tastes like. So let's just jump to the recipe.
All right, so we're gonna start with the dry ingredients. We have 2.5 cups of almond flour, which we've used many times on this show. So look at our banana bread recipe or our strawberry shortcake recipe if you want an explanation on that. And then we have 1/2 cup of coconut flour, which we also use a lot here, and 1/4 cup of ground flax seeds. So ground flax seeds, or flax seeds in general, are super high in fiber, which is wonderful for digestion. It also helps to keep us full, and it's a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are highly anti-inflammatory.
For many of our recipes, you'll see that we usually use ground flax seeds in water to make a flax egg. We're not making a flax egg today, but the flax seed is gonna provide many of those same qualities where it helps gel and kind of bind things together so that we have, a bread-like texture at the end.
Absolutely. So to round out the dry ingredients, we're going to add a teaspoon of baking soda, and then we have a tablespoon of sesame seeds, just to add a little texture to the bread.
I love sesame seeds because they're such a distinct flavor. You can also toast them to get that extra nutty feel.
So we're just stirring all the dry ingredients together just to make sure that they are, nicely mixed and incorporated together and that we don't have a whole lot of clumps. Just gonna set this aside and we're gonna get started with the wet ingredients. So this recipe is actually gonna use the blender for all of the wet ingredients. I like doing this because it has so many eggs in the recipe that it really just gets to whip them and it adds some air to it and it makes everything really nicely incorporated. So Jenny here is gonna demo how to separate an egg because
lots of pressure right now.
because the recipe calls for 4 egg whites and then 6 whole eggs.
All right, so I think the easiest way to separate an egg is instead of tapping a couple times, you wanna do one affirmative tap. So that way it splits into 2 halves and you're kind of just rolling it back and forth. All right, so now I have got yolk in here and I've got the white in here. If you're separating tons and tons of eggs, you can also use your hands. It's a little bit messier, obviously, but it's kind of up to you.
So we have 1 more egg. That was a good one, Jenny.
It's a really aggressive tap. All right.
So we have 4 egg whites in this bowl, and then we're just going to crack 6 whole eggs into here. And this is the first time we've actually cracked eggs properly and put them in a bowl.
That's a lot of eggs.
I know, it's a lot of eggs. Just
giant
Just
omelet?
trust me, guys. Okay, so now we're gonna put all of our eggs into the blender. We are always using organic, cage-free, pasture-raised eggs. Check out our episode on banana bread to learn about why this is so important to us. And then we have 1/2 cup of ghee that is soft. It doesn't have to be fully melted, it just should be nice and soft. If your ghee is hot, you have to be careful because it could cook the eggs. So if you are actually melting your ghee ahead of time, just make sure to temper the eggs by putting a little bit in and then mixing it together before adding the rest of your ghee. You could also use coconut oil or regular butter in this recipe, depending on how you want to make it. I personally like the flavor of ghee, but that's up to you. Ghee is essentially clarified butter with the lactose removed. We also use this in our strawberry shortcake episode, so you can can learn more about it there.
Clarified butter sounds a little complicated, but you can actually make it at home pretty easily using good quality butter. Essentially, you just melt it down and you're gonna pass it through a fine mesh sieve or perhaps a coffee filter if you have that. So you get all the milk solids and lactose out and then save the rest, and that's your ghee.
So ghee is suitable for someone with a mild lactose intolerance because the milk solids and the lactose have been removed, and it retains that really nice taste of butter that we all love. So that's why we use it here on Alt Baking Bootcamp. The remaining wet ingredients include miso. Miso is the star ingredient in this bread. It actually replaces the salt because miso naturally has this really like salty umami flavor. It's also a wonderful source of probiotics, which is essentially the good bacteria in our gut that we hear so much about these days. Having a healthy gut flora is really, really important to our overall health. It's important for our skin, for our digestion, for our immune system, and so much more. So I love adding that probiotic kick to this that also adds quite a bit of flavor.
Miso is a fermented soybean paste that is specific to Japan, though most of the East Asian countries kind of have their own take. There's also a lot of different types of miso. There's some that are sweeter than others, some that are, red or darker colored. So kind of experiment and try out different misos and see what you like. It's so savory and it really makes your mouth water, so you just like want more of it.
Yeah, it's great. So here we're using white miso. I always recommend buying organic, non-GMO soy products. Soy is one of the most genetically modified crops on the planet, and we want to make sure that we're getting really wholesome, natural soy products. If you do not eat soy, you can get chickpea miso, which does the same thing and will give you the same flavor. So anyone who is soy-free can still make this recipe. Lastly, we have 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar.
Apple cider vinegar is awesome, not only for baking and cooking, but you can also do lots of other things with it around the house. You can clean with it, you can wash your hair with it, you can attract flies and kill them with it, all very useful for the household. Apple cider vinegar is essentially apple cider that has then been allowed to ferment further and turn into vinegar.
All right, so we're just gonna blend this up. All right, so now we've got our wet ingredients here. They're ready to go, nice and frothy. We've got our dry ingredients, so we are just going to mix them both in a medium-sized mixing bowl. And while I'm doing this, Jenny's gonna grab our baking pan. So we already have the oven preheated to 375 degrees. Okay, so we're just gonna stir this until all the clumps are removed. We just put eggs in our blender, and I make smoothies in there as well, so I don't want any of that raw egg residue in there. So the best way to clean a blender is to put some hot water and some soap and then give it a good mix for 30 seconds or so, and then wash it again just to make sure you're getting rid of all the raw egg.
You can also wash it with apple cider vinegar.
Good. We put some parchment paper on the sides of the baking dish just so that we can get our bread out nice and easily, but then we're just going to put some ghee on the sides to make sure it doesn't stick. All right, so now we're just going to put our dough in the pan. It's a thick dough, so you're gonna have to work it a little bit to the sides.
And it smells nice.
Yeah, I think it's the miso.
Yeah. Miso and butter together also is a good combination.
So I'm gonna give this a nice tap to even it out. And then the last thing that we're going to do before we bake it is we're gonna sprinkle on some toppings. So here we have some everything bagel spice, which we love, but if that's not your jam, you could also try some herbes de Provence, which I really like as well, or just some flaked sea salt would be, plain and simple and delicious.
If you want something sweet, you could do like dried nuts and seeds and fruits on there, so you can have a sweet and savory mix. But the everything bagel spice is really awesome because you can literally put it on everything and kind of makes everything taste a little bit better. It's essentially a mix of poppy seeds, dried garlic, dried onion, and toasted sesame seeds.
All right, this looks good. So we're gonna bake our paleo bread for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll use our cake tester to check and see when it's done. So we've got our cake tester. You guys know the drill. So we're gonna stick it into the thickest part. Comes out clean. That means it's ready.
All right, we're gonna let this cool for a few minutes before we pull it out of the loaf pan.
The great thing about using this parchment paper is that we can nudge it right out. Check that out, nice and golden brown. Should we try it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Wow.
Holds together really nicely.
Slices really evenly.
All right, let's try it. I can definitely taste the miso. If I didn't know it was in there, I wouldn't.
It just gives it a depth of flavor that's like a little, keeps you wondering where it is. It's really nice.
Because there's so many eggs in here and you're getting some wonderful protein, putting some avocado on here would be a perfect meal.
Or for tomato soup. Instead of just using like a grilled white bread, you get some protein with your vegetables.
This is the kind of recipe that I like to make on a Sunday, and it's super simple, delicious, a great pantry staple.
I love that there's a little bit of crunch from all the seeds, and the flaxseed gives it that kind of extra nuttiness.
And for anyone with a gluten sensitivity or that's trying to stay away from excessive grains, this is gonna be your new favorite recipe. It's honestly so good, and it's so nice just to have a piece of bread with your meals, right?
Yeah. How are you guys gonna make this? Make sure to comment below and also subscribe to Well+Good's YouTube channel.
How do you feel about our first savory alt baking recipe?
I think this was a hit.
Should we do more?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Biscuits?
More savory recipes? Ooh, biscuits, I like that. I'm Mia.
I'm Jenny.
Thanks for watching Alt Baking Bootcamp.
Catch you next time.
Bye.